Thanks to Dr. Nageswaran who couldn't be here, but we have our last speaker who's made it from all the way from the US, from Stanford University, Dr. Anurag Mairal. You missed the photo up, but we'll do one more at the end. So, to kick off the conversation, let me start with Smita Prakash. You have two very interesting perspectives. You are also seeing the news that's happening all over in India. You recently had a news report on how AI is impacting jobs. And then you're also a big media employer as well. So you're also looking at how AI is impacting your own business. So if you could, kind of set the context, and then we'll take the conversation around the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Shekhar, and thank you for the organizers to having me here. Quite right. I did a report recently on the use of AI and the impact of AI on employability. Recently on the use of AI and the impact of AI on employability. And I just found the need to do that because as Mr. Nageshwaran said that, it's a stress test. He said on employability of journalists, of reporters, of camera persons. There is, like you said, that the students these days are doing or learning artificial intelligence and the tools surreptitiously because there's a pushback by educational institutions who don't have that vision that this is something that it's a skill that they need to have right from middle school onwards. So there are a number of people who are applying for jobs using cheap models, and they're all sounding the same. So when I get a resume, it sounds like 15 others which have come in. And when that first firewall is cleared and we go through the first level of sifting, and when you actually meet with them, they do not have the skill which they have said in their LinkedIn profile or when they have applied for jobs. And there's a kind of a lazy attitude of just using a ChatGPT to make their profile and just send it across to 20 different media organizations. It's then that I realized that the skill training which should be there is not there. Similarly, journalists who are working with us, 25 years ago, I know that I was one of those who said, Google use mat karna. Don't use Google to do your story. Go to the ground and report yourself. Find out the truth from the ground. Don't just Google it from different. Probably a dinosaur very early in life in adapting to Google. But it took me probably 6 months to realize that we can use that to upskill. And then the whole rule changed at ANI and we started using Google, and I realized that what Google was doing was different from what AI is doing today. There are many reporters who just, many news organizations today who don't have the budget to send out reporters on the ground. They're just using various AI tools to do it, and this is an existential threat, something that both the speakers before me spoke about. This is a threat which has hit the media, and if you've been watching some of the conversations which are happening at the Munich Security Conference, where they are saying that the old order has broken down. And, with regard to national security, the old order in the media too has broken down. In education systems, it has broken down. And if we don't adapt soon, you're going to have the situation in India like you're having in America, where nobody's reading the newspaper, the physical newspaper. Many in this room, if I even do a show of hands, have not read the newspaper before coming to work, as in a physical newspaper. I think our generation grew up having Reader's Digest in our homes, or we read the Time and Newsweek to understand. We read the Times of India and Hindustan Times to get to know what is happening around the world before we got to work. But that's not happening with I'm sure most of the audience out here. So the media is going to change a lot. Existential threat to many anchors who today are ruling the roost, because you never know, all of you are watching Arnab Goswami on television and your cortisol levels are rising by the minute. You never know that it's possible that Republic has a milder version of, uses AI tool and gets a milder version of Arnab Goswami for the 8 p.m. and the the more excitable version at 9 p.m. and you can choose which version of Arnav you want to watch. It's going to be a reality soon. These AI tools are going to be used in the news organization. So you can choose which version of the anchor you like. Just like you know, and that selection is going to happen for you before you realize that you have made the selection. Just like the news feed is coming in. Just before I conclude, just one more point I want to make is about intellectual property rights. Unfortunately, all the big giants, the big fives, they are scraping content from Indian media organizations and not paying us for IPR, whereas they're paying millions abroad. And that's where I feel that we are losing out, we are losing the battle even before it's begun in India. We need something to be done to protect our IPR for our news organizations. Otherwise, media is going, because it's all clicking, right? Why would anybody want the long form article in Times of India when a short form of that similar kind of article is available from Times of India, Hindustan Times, the Hindu, the Sun newspaper, translated real time and given to you, and the gist out there. So the clicks are going to go, the advertising is going to go, and media in its long form is going to disappear, and India is going to face an existential threat as far as reporting and media organizations are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me now go to Mr. Vineet Nayar. Sir, you've been a veteran of the Indian IT industry. You're working extensively with schools and school children through your Sampak Foundation. If you could set a macro perspective on employment, employability, how this whole debate is shaping up in the context of AI.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. Let me try and go back and understand the AI phenomena from a different lens. When industrial age came in, one of the things the reason industrial age created the kind of value it created was because of a management idea of the fact that you can break a long process into sub-processes and you can scale a person on a sub-process. So if the cars were manufactured where one guy would create a car, in industrial age we broke that process into a guy who is very good with engines, very good with tire, very good with paints. So we dummified the skills to a large extent, and because of which the number of people who came into the employment and the people who were employable were very large. Our education institution, post-industrial age, started catering to these knowledge workers, or what I call micro-skill workers. So therefore, in the education institution, we started imparting knowledge, and in our industry, including the IT industry which I come from, we started taking those knowledge workers and training them in what I call sub-skill, small skill. Now, because of which in Indian IT we have 7-8 million people, and in different industries, different sets of people were hired because of sub-skill. Now you have to understand AI, what it is doing is it is automating the sub-skill. And this has been happening for many years now, right? In remote infrastructure management in BPO, the sub-skills have been automated. The only thing it has happened is the acceleration of automation has increased. Now it has two impacts. Number one, the sub-skill, because it is automated, people can do the same work faster, cheaper, better, and therefore they are not going to depend on the human being. There is where the crisis is coming up. Now the response to that crisis is, would we lose jobs? Now let's look at the second statistics, which is very critical. The amount of investment in technology over the last 20 years has grown on an average worldwide at about 7 or 8% year on year. And if you look at the projection, the amount of investment in technology is going to grow but between 11 and 14% year on year, depending on what industry you want. So on one side, we are automating a lot. On the other side, the investment in technology is going up. So what does it mean? What it means is there is a significant change in skills, exactly the way it happened in industrial age, that we needed what we call sub-skills. In the AI age, we need what we call the macro skills. What does that mean? That means that having a knowledge of something or being able to do a sub-skill is passé, it is not needed. To be able to reimagine, or I call them reimagineer, to problem solve and to imagine a solution of a problem which nobody else has been able to solve is the new skill which is required. Third point, because there is significant profit-driven, subscription-driven vocabulary which is in the market, everybody is assuming that AI is technology. It is not. There are a lot of companies which are worth billions and trillions of dollars just because of a technology, and they're making us believe that AI is technology. It is not. AI and the real use of AI is a use case of AI. How do you use AI, for which you need different set of skills? Now, therefore, to have AI as a skill or technology being taught in school will help subscription of a lot of companies, and they'll make a lot of money, including my old company. But the issue is that the skill which we need to teach our children today is to reimagine, to solve problems, to think of alternate solutions, and to do what humans do best, because the machines will never be able to do it. And therefore, the question is, how do we do it? I think India has an opportunity. First, India has a threat that the amount of people we have in what we call the sub-skill task is very large, including IT industry. And if we are not careful, we will have a lot of unemployable youth and unemployed youth. Therefore, it is a crisis which needs urgent attention. Now, what do? In our schooling system, we need, I was just talking about it, we, for example, in Sampak Foundation started what we call half stories. We tell half story and tell the children to reimagine the balanced story. So we need to introduce curriculum which is imaginative. We don't need to teach knowledge of algebra and fraction. Yes, we need to teach that, but we need to come up with imaginative curriculum which increases what we call the jugaad thinking, so that people start imagining new solutions in the education institution. Therefore, the new curriculum on AI is not teaching AI technology, but is teaching them different problem-solving skills. From an employment point of view, I think it is very important for us to understand that Indian companies, including Indian IT companies, are going to be profit-driven. And therefore, if you believe that they are going to create employment, you must be dreaming. So therefore, the question is, how do we create employment in this environment? And that employment comes from mass-scale startups, which is what this government is already doing. So how do we create new sets of people who are trying to solve new sets of problems, not new sets of technology? And if we do that, we will get it right. And the last point, what she talked about, I think we as Indians have to be very careful on who does data belong to. And that is a debate we have a problem with. The LLM models which exist worldwide are far superior than the Indian models. Unfortunately, in India, and I am to blame for that, and Indian IT is to blame, we never develop products. So therefore, we do not have SLMs and LLMs which are world class. So on one side, we have global LLM products, which they are coming to India and training on our Indian data. Should we allow that? Should we not allow that? But on the other side, if we don't allow that, then we have the data, but we don't have the LLM models. So how do we encourage technology companies to develop the LLM models? And therefore, this needs radical strategic thinking and a very important aspect. Otherwise, we will either give up our data, and I must remind you, I come from a time when the computer industry came in and Microsoft DOS operating system was thrown free in this country. And HCL had an operating system, Infosys had an operating system, TCS had an operating system, all of us had an operating system. But Microsoft came in and the DOS was pirated and everybody had a PC with the pirated DOS. What happened? All three operating systems, these three companies were killed. And therefore, over a period of time, DOS became the operating system, and then they started charging billions and billions of dollars, and the country lost the capability of developing operating system. So I think it's a very critical aspect for us to think about. Who does this data belong? What is the kind of incentives we are going to give to develop LLM technologies or SLM technologies fast, so that we train on our data? Otherwise, an LLM will come in with our data and we'll immediately see return and we'll celebrate and we will do all these kind of press releases. But India will lose a competitive advantage on something which is very critical for the next decade. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In fact, you brought back memories. My BTech project was on the HCL Magnum.
And I was the product manager who designed that operating system.
So Mr. Bhikchandani, I think this is a great segue to you because Mr. Nayar spoke about unemployment, unemployability. You've been there in the thick of the debate, right from the gig economy to Naukri.com. You have a very solid ground perspective, so please share your thoughts on.
Okay, so first of all, I'll say one thing: don't panic. Okay, we'll figure it out. Okay, I don't know what the answer is, but we'll figure it out. Okay, second, the truth is, I don't know what's going to happen, and nobody knows, right? But the environment is chaotic, it's dynamic, it's moving fast, and we've got to go with the flow. Now, let's go back into history. I'll tell 3 stories. So story number 1 is I go back to 1982. I was in college. I went to Delhi University from 81 to 84. I was in my second year. And हम पढ़ाई कर रहे थे, तफरी कर रहे थे, वेलापंती कर रहे थे, Delhi University, you know what it's like, right? And suddenly 2 or 3 organizations came up, private sector. If I remember correctly, 82 NIIT and AppTech, right? And they said we will train people in how to use computers, private sector. And they started small, but some people began to go and take courses. But they were not mainstream education. It took 5 to 10 years for people to by and large understand, agar computer istemal karna sikhoge, maybe you'll get a job. It's an employable skill. It took 15 years for Delhi University to respond and say we'll have a computer course, some sort of computer course. Not really programming, but how to use a computer. Some programming, but mostly how to use a computer, right? So what is the lesson from here? When a new technology comes in, very often institutions that are not accountable to markets. Nobody would lose his job in Delhi University because they didn't introduce a computer course. Institutions that are not accountable to markets respond slowly. They respond with a lag. They are not usually the pioneers. In those days, of course, there weren't too many private universities in India. There were some, but not too many. There were private engineering colleges, and they were just beginning. And therefore, computers meant was you do engineering, you go to IIT, and tum computer seekhte ho, but that aam janta can learn a computer was a new concept. Now it happened. This is the first story. So institutions respond slowly. Don't expect it to be very different now. Number 2, now the institutions that are not accountable to markets respond slowly. Number 2, second story, 1985. I am now 21, 22 years old. Rajiv Gandhi Sarkar thi. So it's announced that we are going to introduce computers in banks. Right? Now the All India Bank Employees Association was a very powerful trade union then. Now they got very worried, and there were all sorts of blowback, saying we'll lose jobs if you use computers. But the government said we are going ahead regardless. This is modern India, this is new India. There must be computers in banks. So computers were bought and put into banks. For a while they were not used. But they began to be used. And guess what? Nobody lost jobs. People became more productive. They served customers better. Right? Nobody lost jobs. So second lesson is when new technology comes in, there is almost always great fears of job loss. But very often productivity goes up. And people are doing more things. The same number of people are doing more things. They're doing different things. They're doing more useful things. Can it be different this time? It's possible. Anything's possible. But will it necessarily be different? Answer is not necessarily. People might learn to do different things. People might learn to do stuff that is not getting done might get done. So I'll give you an example from my own company. We've got about, at Naukri, we've got about 1.5 lakh clients, 1.2, 1.3 lakh clients. We have a sales team. We have a sales effort. So the top 10, 20% of clients, they get a field sales force calling on them because they are more valuable. We can afford a field sales force calling on them, and it gives us an opportunity to upsell. So it makes a lot of sense to have a field sales force. The next 30% of clients, they get telesales. Right? You can sit in an office and you can make phone calls. Now, the bottom 50% of clients who really don't pay that much, it doesn't make financial sense to have a a person calling on them. It doesn't make financial sense for a person even phoning up. So we put a chat bot, a voice bot. Automated calls, you can't make out it's not a human being. That's how it's advanced, right? And suddenly we are calling them up. Now what is happening here is stuff that is not getting done. We have served an underserved segment, underserved market by using AI. Thus far at least, nobody's lost a job in our company because of AI. I don't know what will happen going forward. But right now it's being used to increase productivity. It is being used to do stuff better. It's being used to do stuff, better. Okay, so simple example. One more. So, there's a surfeit of content on video, on YouTube, podcasts, aap bhi karte hain, right? You don't have time to follow all the podcasts. Well, 50 minute ka podcast hai, man, I have to listen and watch for 50 minutes, it won't work. I don't have time. So every time an interesting podcast comes or an interesting interview comes, I just ask a colleague of mine, yaar isko cloud mein dal de, get me a summary. So abhi Vishal Sikka spoke about AI. It was a 30-40 minute interview. And I said, yaar, I can't go 30-40 minutes. I gave it to Rishabh, a colleague of mine, isko kar. Within 10 minutes he gave it back to me. He had 3-page summary. Now this is not something I would have done or even watched 40 minutes.
See, I lost the click. This is just what I was saying. This is how I'm getting beaten.
Okay. No, you're saying useful stuff, which I will not watch because I don't have 40 minutes. But at least I get to absorb your content. But I may not give you advertising, right? Okay. So so this is stuff being done that has not been done earlier. It's being done by AI. Nobody's lost a job yet. The final story I will talk about is 1989. So I finished college. I've worked for 3 years in advertising. I've done business school. And I'm now in my first job after business school. I'm in marketing. I'm managing the brand Horlicks for a company called HMM. It's now called GlaxoSmithKline after various mergers and acquisitions. Now that marketing team was 10-15 people. All were MBAs from the IIMs or FMS or Bajaj or the best business schools. Okay, 9-10 of us. Now what is the difference? I was the newest. I was 89 batch. The others were 85 batch, 86 batch, 84 batch, 83 batch, 81 batch, right? They were all senior to me. What was the difference? The watershed moment was that for the PCs came into the IIMs for the first time in 1986 to 87, right? Which meant that the 88 and 89 batches from the IIMs were the first batches to actually use PCs and be proficient in them because it was part of the course. It was a tool that was used, right? Now I went into HMM. And there were 2 PCs. There were 4 PCs. There were 4 PCs in the marketing department. One was with the secretary or the head of marketing, so nobody had access to it. Other was a secretary of a marketing manager, nobody had access to it. Unka hi hai. 2 were for the general pool. The problem was nobody knew how to use them because they had not studied it as part of the course. I was like a fish to water, right? A PowerPoint, वो presentation होते थे, ठीक है? So in those days there was no PowerPoint. There was something called Harvard Graphics, a software called Harvard Graphics. So all pirated. Okay. I don't know. I don't recall, but it had to be branded PC. It had to be a branded PC. It must have been HCL. Okay. Okay. So I was the only guy who knew how to use it. So before that, people would take these overhead transparencies and write slides by hand, right? And I came in with this Harvard graphics and used to take a computer printout on the transparency. Suddenly, this was new tech and it was sexy. So I became the go-to guy. See, ye mera kar de yaar, ye mera kar de yaar. Okay. So I was the most useful guy at the ground level because I had a skill with the technology, which is actually easy to use, but you had never learned it. I learned it because it was there in the institute. Now, AI is like that. You don't have to build LLMs, right? And I tell you what, to all the young people here, you don't worry about systemic problems. You don't worry about policy issues. You just worry about your job, yeah, and your career, your individual job and career. What should you do? What should you do to make sure AI doesn't make you lose your job? Or in fact, AI enables you to get your job. just learn 5, 10, 15 useful AI tools. Because let me assure you, the older people in any company will not know them because they are not quick learners. Right? But if you learn them, right, you will get a job. Now, so the one message I want to leave is, look, AI is happening. It is relentless. So if you don't do AI, AI will be done to you. So you better do AI. Yeah.
Thank you. I think, Satish, let me bring you in because Mr. Bhikchandani spoke about Claude. There's been so much of buzz, stock markets tanked, market caps went down. What is Claude doing to your business at Infosys and IT services, and also on the question of enterprise automation, which is your product area?
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and glad to be here. Thanks for the invite. I'll share a few thoughts specifically from an enterprise IT perspective. To start with, I just want to mention that AI to all technologists, every worker in the world, it should be seen as a capability multiplier. It is not necessarily a tool to replace jobs, but it is something that you can use, as you rightly mentioned, to deliver faster, better, and incredible outcome in the same jobs that you're currently doing. So it's a capability multiplier. When we look at this as a capability multiplier, it impacts, both sides of the enterprises, right? One is the people who are building the software, which are engineers. It should also impact the people who are using the software, right? And so both of their lives will get transformed. And I have given this example many places. Today, all of you have phones. Today, you open your phones and take a photograph. The incredible photographs have been made so simple simply because of technology. That's it's a capability multiplier in the hands of every human being. See AI as one such more. Another tool, a great tool to make decisions that we were not able to do earlier, maybe even faster, with far more clarity. I think that's how we should absorb this technology, one. If you look at enterprises, there is always a concern, Shashi mentioned the stock market and all that. Let me not comment about that, but I want to let you know that it is not like technology is gone away, right? If any, with AI, technology will get far more entrenched in enterprises of the future. It is not going to be less technology, it's going to be more technology. Now, a template that we can look at are digital native companies that are around us. If you look at these digital natives, which were born out of software, right? Which were not necessarily brick and mortar companies. If you look at how they run their firms, there are, employees who understand the business strategy, who have different roles today. But they design the logic, they design the flows, they design the thinking behind the business and code that into the software and let the software run this business. So software is the heart of the business. It runs the business. And there are a lot of people who are there to take care of the software, right? That's how digital native companies are. So if you fast forward, let's say next 5 years and 10 years, I think where will AI take all these enterprises to become more and more digitally native? Now that means more technology jobs. I don't think it's going to be less technology, but different kinds of jobs. And I don't think anybody should be paranoid about it. Right? Like any other technology that has come by, that I think we've all, being Indians or otherwise worldwide, embraced it and made it good for ourselves and our lives and our families and the society. I think AI will be one more. So enterprises in the long run will continue to use more technology. I just want to say that. The complexity, if any of these enterprises, is huge, right? They are like civilizations by their own, right? It's not going to change overnight. So I don't think anybody should fear almost like AI will take away jobs tomorrow, day after. No, it's not going to happen. It has been evolving over, for a very long period of time. It will continue to evolve. The speed has accelerated, obviously. So you can see this in 3 phases, right? There will be automation that was mentioned multiple times. Next 2 to 3 years, there will be incredible automation. I think if we were to look another 3 to 5 years, there will be a lot of workforce restructuring that will happen due to, I would say, automation. And the last leg of it is the business model transformation. And the business model transformation, at least I believe, is going to start mirroring closer to the digital native operating models. I think that's where AI really will take everybody, which means more value creation, faster value creation, etc. Lastly, I think, because Shashi said, Satish, you need to speak about the technologies and the coders and the engineers. I can tell you from our own organization, which is a software product company, AI has generated incredible productivity. 70-80% more productivity in the last 2 to 3 years is significant. But there's nothing to fear about it. It's just that you can do more innovation faster, you can deliver higher quality of products to your customers. So that is one. And if I don't know how many of you are engineers, just so you guys can understand, if you were to look at agile development as a methodology that is used, and you develop agile teams, Scrum teams, right? Many of you are nodding, so I'm assuming you're technologists here. And you look at, there are 7 or 8 members in a simplistic way, and that's how work gets done. Tomorrow there'll be 3 human beings and 5 agents. You see what I mean? Humans will be not only defining the problems, will also be managing, monitoring what agents do. And finally, let's not forget, it's the human beings who take accountability for all these technologies. So human beings are not going anywhere, jobs are not going anywhere, it's just going to change. The nature of the job is just going to change. Let me pause here.
So, Anurag, so Satish said, 3 humans, 7 agents. So, the next time I go to a doctor, is it going to be a human or an agent?
Great question. How many of the folks in the audience are students? Can I see a show of hands? I'm a professor, so I need to know my audience. There are 3 points I want to very quickly make, and excellent points made by everybody here on the panel. First of it, I don't know how many of you read this book of mine. This is Reimagining Health. And what we're really talking about, reimagining health employment, which is what I'm going to talk about. There are 8 billion people in the world, out of which 5 billion people do not have meaningful access to healthcare. And part of the reason they do not have meaningful access to healthcare is because we have become more and more sick care-centric model, where tertiary care institutions like AIMS and Stanford hospitals are the ones providing care to most of our people. Whereas, where are most of the people? They're in the homes and communities and villages and smaller towns and cities. So that's point number one, that there is a need for healthcare or health system to be reimagined, right? Bringing it closer to people, closer to humanity, as it were. Second point I would make is that the cost of care is going to continue to go up if we stay with the sick care model, right? So if we want India to be a Viksit Bharat by 2047, or we want rest of the LMIC settings, the 5 billion people I talked about, for them to emerge out of poverty, emerge out of their resource constraints, they need to make sure that they are able to keep their populations healthy and productive in a cost-effective way. What that means is you need innovation. Technology innovation is part of it, process innovation, to enable that shift. And then the last thing I would say is that we often think of AI, or any technological tool for that matter, as taking away jobs. In fact, we should flip that, especially in healthcare. Healthcare is a very strong use case for AI, for technology in general. In the US, 15% of the population is involved with healthcare one way or another. If you translate that number to India, you're talking about 150 million plus jobs. Okay? So if you think of AI as a job creator, a net job creator, because you have 1.4 billion people whose health needs to be cared for, you need a lot of people who will provide care for, as our population ages and as our healthcare moves to closer and closer to the smaller towns and cities and villages, we need more and more people. But how are you going to do that? The one way you can do that is by enabling them through technology. Now it could be devices, diagnostics, or digital health. And the latest tool in the toolkit is AI-enabled systems. I was just looking at the new kind of jobs that would be created because of AI. How many of you have heard care navigator for high-risk cohorts, diabetes, TB, pregnancy, heart failure? Care navigator for high-risk patients. I mean, those jobs don't exist today. So you, in fact, are going to create new kind of jobs. And a good number of you folks in the audience who are students will likely be doing those jobs. So the way I think about AI in healthcare and other use cases too, I suspect this might be the case in other industries, other applications, that AI will actually net create jobs. So the last point I'll quickly make is that India shouldn't really be catching up with AI in healthcare in particular, or AI in other use cases. India should be leapfrogging it. That's what India should be aiming for.
Very interesting perspective, Anurag. You also are on the board of the IIT Bombay Alumni Association in the United States. What are you hearing from fresh graduates who are now coming out of universities within the IIT family and, of course, the broader student ecosystem as well? What are they seeing in the job market?
It's challenging for them because I think you made this point, Sanjeev, that folks are not ready when a technology wave hits. They're not ready for it, and then they quickly try to pivot. And our academic institutions, mine included, even though Stanford is at the hub of technology innovation, and we have a lot of professors, a lot of students who are involved in it. Honestly, we are not doing as good a job as we should in preparing this next generation for the kinds of jobs that are coming. So they are concerned, but they're also excited. I think the youngest population that's graduating today feels a lot more excited about AI technology and feels they could do something with it. But we have to show them. We have to show them. I think our generation has to show them the path. We have to show them how these tools could potentially be useful for creating more productivity, more impact, more outcome at a lower cost. That's the other thing. Most folks, when they see the numbers around AI, LLMs in particular, they're looking at numbers, trillions of dollars being invested. I think the ROI for that, I don't know how that's going to be. But I think from use case perspective, which is where most of the ROI is going to come from, I see tremendous impact. A $1 trillion healthcare health technology ecosystem requires 10 million trained professionals, 10 million, which is very much what India's opportunity is.
So I think we are in the last 7 minutes or so. I'll just quickly go around the rest of the panel, very short responses. So Satish, with you starting, Infosys, when in our days would recruit in the thousands, how is it changing now? What are you seeing? Is it very targeted recruitment? What's changed?
So I think from a core capability, I'd say two things that everybody should have. It's whether it's technologies or otherwise. One is lifelong learnability. I think it becomes an essential ingredient that students should have. Right? If any, with AI, I think that's far more important than ever before, right? Because one thing is for sure, things around you will change, will continuously change. And the speed with which it's going to change is also accelerating. So which means learnability has to be the core capability for everyone to harness on. And I think if I were to hire someone, Shashi, I'll be looking for that, number one.
Sir, your closing thoughts, what do you see as Mr. Bhikchandani?
Well, I mean, for each person here, individually, I think set yourself a personal target of learning how to use 3 AI platforms within the next 3 months and applying them in your work. The more you do that, the more your job is safe.
Even though you are the moderator, Shashi, being, it's second nature to me to do the, so, couple of points which I want to make is one, Satish, when you're talking about, capability multiplier and that AI may not take over many jobs, I kind of, at least in my profession, I find that jobs are going because, long ago, there was a telex operator. He lost his job to the fax machine. There was a guy who was a gopher who would take the tape from the cameraman to the newsroom. That went away when chip technology came in. Once chip technology came in, we thought that that's what going to be. Then FTP started off. So there are many, many jobs which have gone. Those who upskilled and learnt, they are the ones who are able to do, and which, we heard in the healthcare sector. When there are new, if you do not upskill, you don't. I use, for healthcare sector, I'll tell you, I've gone through a plethora of dietitians. It's an uphill battle to, as you age for controlling weight, diabetes, all these kind of things. So what do? I went into an AI model and it's helped me for 6 months. There's a person who's not judging me because I ate that extra samosa. And she's not looking at me with that disapproving look. It's just telling me what is the solution. So I'm using AI for health. Have I taken away the healthcare person's job? Maybe I have. She's lost a client. And not just she, 15 others who have tried before that. On LLM models, which you were talking about, whether the government is going to give incentives, when the India will come up with it, I'm sorry, but the IT sector has lost out on that. The LLM models are not hallucinating as much as they used to 6 months back or a year ago or even 2 months back. We have lost the race on LLMs. We have to make sure that the LLM doesn't strip us of our intellectual property rights, as Mr. Bhikchandani, which you said that you're watching my podcast in 20-minute clips. Let me tell you what I did. When I started it for the first year, I was resisting it. I said, everybody has to watch that 1-hour interview that I'm doing with Shashi, and he better give me a 1-hour content on that, and everybody watch that 1 hour. Then I realized there are people like Sanjeev who's listening to it for 20 minutes and I'm not getting the clicks or the revenue. So what did I do? The second time I had Shashi on the podcast, I made reels out of it. So people like Sanjeev watched the reels and I got the revenue. So I beat him. So that, I think, what...
आप एक और चीज करिए. You please also give Claude summaries in text of 2 pages, 3 pages. So, you know, that can supplement the reels.
Yeah, okay, but I'll charge you for that.
Mr. Nayar, your closing thoughts, because we are almost out of time.
Yeah, very quickly. First is, Smita, in India, you do not eat a samosa alone. I think there are 2 statements I'd like to make so that very clear. 50% of current jobs will go. I think we are fooling ourselves by assuming they will not go. The second is that we will have 50% more jobs than we have today. And if you combine these two, the issue is not the number of jobs that will exist. The issue is the skills in which we are in are going to get obsolete, and hence jobs are going to get obsolete, like the telex, like the operator she talked about. Therefore, this is a mega opportunity for us to not upgrade our skills, I don't like that word, but to reskill ourselves and to ask ourselves what skill is going to be relevant for tomorrow. And as a 60-year-old man, I can do it, and a 20-year-old person, you can do it. And that is a critical debate we need to have in the country, not about technology, not about LLMs, because SLMs can do exactly the same thing. It is about what skills are going to be relevant for tomorrow, which is going to use the technology to be able to do that, because there will be 50% more jobs. Now, whether those jobs will be in India or in US or in Vietnam, nobody knows. Remember what Indian IT did. Indian IT migrated most IT jobs across the world to India because they had a proposition which the world did not have. So India needs to develop that proposition so that we are competitive on a global scale. So this fight is not about India. This fight is going to be fought in the international space of who is going to use technology to create jobs and get a major share of the 50%.
Thank you, sir. Just before I conclude, when we designed our AI4India calendar, we thought we'll do it using AI, and the whole output, the design output, was so dry, so robotic, so mechanical that we were not very happy. And then we reached out to a young designer who used AI, but with human creativity, and created the colorful presentation that was running at the beginning of the session. So I'd like to call Ankita, the designer who did that. And I'll request Smita ji to felicitate her with this.
With that, we conclude the session. A big round of applause for all the speakers, please.